Hey guys, welcome to the CLP Audio Workshop and to the channel. Tonight we are going to dive into all the comments you guys had left on my call of action on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok this week. I had asked you guys in a little short 60-second video to tell me what you would tell the venues that you play at. So you guys, answered the call to action in spades, man. It's just absolutely amazing. All the information, and this is what tonight's video is going to be. It's going to be a reactionary video. I'm going to read your comments, and we're going to kind of go through this together, and we're going to talk about all facets of your perspective to the venue, and then stick around to the end because at the end we're gonna kind of flip the script a little bit, and you're going to want to stick around for that because it's going to prelude next week's video, and you are definitely going to want to hear that information if you're in a band that plays venues and a working circuit band or whatever. So let's just dive right into this. Let's not waste any time and put my spectacles on, because I am very much 50 years old. So first comment is the venues take risks that so many patrons don't understand, from insurance and ADA, it's alcohol, and those guys at ABC, some people call that, or whatever, and countless other considerations. I'm just so appreciative that venues are still around, especially the indie mom and pop venues where young artists can hone their craft. Let me, preempt this with the idea that we're really talking about venues kind of like, venues that are at least 100 seat up to 1,000 seat, venues, because I used to work at a venue that we'd get 1,000 people in there regularly. Maybe not seated, but you know what I'm saying. They seated like 550, 575, but if we took the tables up, you could get 1,000 in there easily. So that's kind of the middle market we're shooting at, and I think most of these comments are directed toward that level of venue, to where this comment here, he's talking about independent mom and pop places. Some of those venues are independent mom and pop places. Some of them are not. Some of them are geared more toward acoustic acts, small little 3-piece bands. They don't really have much of a budget. Maybe they're a glorified coffee shop or something, or a very small brewery, or something like that. These comments are really going to reflect to that level of venue. These comments are going to really reflect toward the just down the middle of the road, middle market venues that 99% of A and B bands are playing. So kind of keep that in mind, because I love what this guy's saying here. This was Rob Rudds who had left that comment. And I like what he's saying about the mom and pop venues. I always try to support local business whenever I can. And it's great to have those venues there to really give young guys a place to get their feet wet. A lot of the smaller C rooms is probably what we would categorize those as. Those C rooms really give us that opportunity, give us, the opportunity to, for agents and guys like me or whatever, to kind of go around and see up and coming bands and see what's going on. And there's value in that, there really is. And I'm very appreciative of the people who came to the table here with positive comments, because there's a lot of frustration in this stuff that we're going through here. And we're going to kind of unpack that together. And there's a couple comments in here where they're really just being inquisitive and wanting to work with the venue to make the most out of the opportunity to make them money and to build your brand as a band. So let's try to kind of keep things balanced as we go through this. So the next comment says, thank you for supporting live local music. That's a big deal. Without venues, we got no place to play, no place to work. How do we work more efficiently together to promote upcoming shows? What do you expect of a band on a given night? What metrics do you use to gauge whether a band was a success or a failure? Is it head counts or register totals or that sort of thing? And I'll tell you from my perspective, and having really worked with a lot of venue owners and been in those circles of people who are kind of in control of the money, it's a combination of both. You're not going to turn big register numbers if you don't have butts and seats. So your door count is probably going to be, your saving grace in that. If you got a strong door count, you're going to have good register, numbers. Food and beverage is how we describe it in this business. So yeah, one hand kind of washes the other in that sense. How can we as a band provide a better experience for your patrons? I think every band should be asking themselves that. The next comment, a covered stage or pop-up tent is not a waterproof environment for electronic gear. Rain is never courteous enough to fall perfectly vertically, that's so true. I'm smiling because as a production guy, this is a big deal, Tarps are not adequate protection during moderate or heavy rain. And please properly ground your stages or outside structures. I know this isn't glamorous stuff, but it separates people from unnecessary loss of equipment, money, and major safety issues. Lastly, most equipment manufacturers clearly tell end users to not run their gear on generators or they won't honor warranties. In some cases, if they do, you just need to make sure you have a really good generator and that generator is grounded. As a production guy who has a mobile stage and I own my own generator, in fact, it's sitting here right next to me, I ground the stage and I ground the generator, to make sure that we're safe there. But what he's saying still applies, man. Like my stage has a roof over it and they think, oh, okay, well, we got a roof over the stage. That means it's a rain or shine event. No, really it doesn't. Because, the trim height from the deck to the bottom of the ceiling or the roof of the stage is about 12 feet. And even if rain is coming straight down, it still, comes in 3 or 4 feet on each side of the stage, even with the backdrop in place. And if you add even a little bit of wind to that, it's blowing in on equipment. And we can never do shows where water is present because we're performing literally with electronics in our hands, and standing on, extension cords and power strips and, all this power distribution all the way around the stage. So it's very important that if you're a venue who is going to have an outdoor stage, to make sure you get adequate power. I'm not going to read all these comments because a lot of them are kind of saying the same things. Adequate power is probably the number one or close second to the complaints that we have heard from bands toward venues. Having adequate power. You need to have at least 3 or 4 20 amp circuits at your stage area, whether you're inside or outside. I used to say 3. I'm to the point now where, they screw up the electricity so much. I'm just saying 4, That way we got a circuit for lighting, we got a circuit for audio, and we got 2 circuits for stage gear. Now, if you're a tiny little club that only has little 3-piece bands and acoustic acts, you probably get away with 1 circuit, But if you are a restaurant who is graduating into a more happy hour crowd and starting to bring live music into your venue, when you designate an area to have a band, make sure you call your electrician and have them install 3 or 4, at least 3. I recommend 4 20 amp circuits. If you're a medium to large size venue, have 3 or 4, circuits around the back of the stage for bands that don't carry a power distro. But if you're hiring a company like me, I'm going to come in, I'm looking for a 240 outlet, so I'm looking for like an L1450, range plug, 4-prong range plug, 50 amp, just to be able to run audio and stage gear on. If you're a big venue that's covering 1,000, 1,500 people regularly, I would recommend 2. or put in a three-phase, cam lock system or something like that. 250s, even single phase, is usually more than enough to make it work. You can put one on lighting if you don't have house lighting, if they're bringing a full light rig in, and you can put one on audio, and you can run the other 20 amps around the stage. You run stage gear on that, if you have to. So you can make that work. As a venue, that's what you really need to have in place. If it's an outdoor venue, you need to make sure grounding is all correct on that stage, that this just isn't like gypsy built on top of another, faulty electrical system when you put this stuff in. You really need to get this right, guys, because you got people's lives at stake here. And at the very least, their gear. And especially these like dock bars are horrible for this. Dock bars always have horrible electricity. And it's like, come on, man. You're already not paying the band enough money. They're working for peanuts, especially if they got to pay somebody like me to do production. That's cutting into half of probably what they're making anyways. The least you can do is, outfit your club or your stage area in an intelligent way. Get enough of an overhang of a roof so that if you get a light to moderate rain, you can maybe keep moving forward with the performance. Anything more than that, you just have to shut it down. And you've got to really listen to the band production people, or if the band's doing their own production, listen to them, tell you what is safe and what is not safe, because I'll guarantee you they know more about this than what you do 90% of the time. You can't have guys standing on puddles of water on stage. You can't do that. And I have seen people, I did a video not long ago about, these outdoor concert promoters pressuring, production people to put the band back on stage before they get the stage, dried out, and that sort of thing. And I've seen some of my competition do that several times. Luckily, no one got hurt, but it's only going to take one incident, and it's going to give the whole industry a bad name in your area. So it's super, super important. And I'm covering about, 12 or 15 comments just with that, 3-minute statement. Get the power right and understand that when, weather comes in, especially if there's any kind of wind whatsoever, wind pushes water right in people's faces, right in there on their gear. They're showing up at the gig, with thousands of dollars worth of guitars and guitar amps and all that kind of stuff. I'm showing up with tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear. We are very protective of that. So don't cop an attitude when we, say, look, this isn't safe and we don't feel comfortable with this. Because if something happens to our gear, 99.9% of the time, you're going to do nothing to help compensate us for that failure. Think about that, guys. You're going to do absolutely nothing. You're going to give this guitar player $3,000 for his guitar rig that just took a dump because you forced them back on stage and they tried to tell you that this wasn't safe. No, typically you're going to kind of just tell them they're SOL. And that's not cool, man. It's a whole lot easier just to take the loss and end the gig, call it and say, look, this just ain't going to work. We have, weather issues. Plus, really, who's going to stand in the rain and watch a band play? I mean, come on. And if you're playing to a bar, especially some of these dock bars where the stage is, 50 or 70 feet away from, any covered area around a bar area, like in a tiki bar or something, are you really, getting what you want out of this situation? Sometimes you just got to cut your losses. Listen, if you have a problem with losing money in situations like that, or losing money, and I'm going to talk about this, more in a later video when we talk to venues, but if you have a problem with losing money, you should not be in the music business, because there's a risk that every promoter and every bar owner takes, and bands need to respect this. There's a risk that this bar owner and this event promoter takes every time they put on a show. Now, the reward is great when the weather's good and everything's cool and the place is packed and you sold all the tickets you wanted to sell. That's also the guy that's going to make the most money because he's taking the most risk. So don't be upset about that, bands. But, you guys got to realize, man, that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. On the gigs that you make big money, make sure you put some of that away. Because as someone who's been putting on events for, 30 some years of my life, I can tell you there's been times where I got my rear end handed to me. But I had a little bit of a cushion to fall back on events that were successful. You can never look at live music on one isolated event. I dealt with a municipality here recently, just this year, who used to have big national bands and big festival style stuff in their park all the time, and they had 1 year where they got rained on and they kind of lost their rear end, and they just threw their hands up in the air and they quit doing events. This year was the first time they've done any events in almost 20 years. And I had to go in there and almost give them the event to make it work. Believe me, we jumped through a lot of hoops on that gig, but I think we're trying to rebuild something there, and I think there's a future there. So, I mean, if you're afraid of, if your dollars and cents are that crucial that one slow night is going to put you out of business or something like that, you do not want to get into the music business, because it's not going to work. So let's keep going here. Proper representation. So that's probably the number one thing above adequate power. Proper representation of the band. So you got, and there's layers of this that need to be discussed. First of all, there are more clubs that are not doing their due diligence and promoting events than there are bands not doing their due diligence promoting events. Because I know bands that don't do anything as well. But I know a whole lot more clubs, and can sit here for the next hour and tell you stories about nightclubs that couldn't even put our name on the sign, in front of the place, and the club is facing the highest traffic road within 20 miles. Like, you would get a lot of walk-in stuff if you just put our name on the sign. Or, God forbid, spell our name correctly on the sign. When a band pulls up to a venue and you got this big marquee out front, like now the digital signage is all the rage. Everybody's got a digital LED, sign out in front of their place, telling, this, that, and the other. And the band's not on the marquee, or their band name is spelled wrong. That immediately communicates to that band disrespect. That immediately communicates disrespect. You're already starting off on the wrong foot with that band. And it might be a band that, over the next couple years would build your room into something that is a force to be reckoned with. I've seen that many, many times. You have to get that right. Or back to the social media thing. And you guys know that I hound on this all the time because it's free. You nightclubs and, event promoters, I'll just pick on nightclubs right now. I can right now go to 2 or 3 nightclubs that I know has live music regularly, every week or at least every other week. And I'll go to their Facebook profile, and there's absolutely nowhere on their profile that I can find a calendar of events. Now, I can find 55 posts about what the daily special is in the kitchen, when steak night is, even when trivia is, but I can't find a calendar of events. Whoever's running the social profile for that venue has made no effort to create an event for each band that is there, because that needs to be done. A lot of times, look, I'll even go this far. A lot of times I know bands that will create the event and they'll just ask to make you the co-host. So it shows up on both profiles. In that case, you don't even have to do anything, but just hit an approve button to co-host that. And then it shows up on your profile. Is that so hard to do? And this just jacks bands out into left field, because most of these bands are paying to boost your event on their page to try and get people to the club. Most of these bands have spent thousands of dollars in marketing trying to get people to your club. Proper representation is crucial in building a healthy relationship with your circuit of bands that play your venue. And without that, the band is like, you can't have the argument like, okay, well, you guys didn't draw anybody tonight. Oh, really? Well, what exactly did you do to help the situation? I like how some of these questions were laid out, or some of these comments were laid out like, how many people do you put into place? How many? And it's a valid question. What does your club do to put anybody in here? Because I want to know as the band manager, so I can gauge what the door count is. If you're a club that regularly, puts 400 people into place, and we put 550 in there, okay, well, I know that we drew 150 people. But if you're a club that puts, 75 people in a club that seats 575, and you have, 400 people on the door, well, I'm obviously can take credit for a lot more numbers on the door. And that reflects in how I get paid. That reflects in our future financial negotiations and things like that. So, what are you doing as a venue to bring to the table something to help the bands? Because so many of these venues, and I've experienced this myself, so many of these venues are depending on the bands so desperately to bring crowds into their bars that when it doesn't pan out the way they think it should pan out, then they don't want to bring the band back. And that's not fair, because statistically, it takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months for any new band in your venue to establish a following in your venue. Now, there may be 5 bands in your area that no matter where they play, they sell the place out. We call those A bands. But the other 87% of the bands that are playing your area are B bands. And it's going to take them a while to build, to win your people over, to get their people who go to the club across the street to your club. Because one of the other comments that I seen in here was, how about servicing our fan base in a healthier way? I've seen this firsthand multiple times. People drove 2 hours to come see their favorite cover band play at your venue. They get seated and they sit there for 45 minutes and no waitress ever comes to them and offers them a drink, offers to take their order, or acts like, they even want to be there. I've had people get up and walk out of the venue because of that. Drove 2 hours. And mad as a nest of hornets. Or their waitress came to the table and had a horrible attitude and treated them like dirt, act like they were, somehow in their way of happiness when they're in the service industry. They should be serving the customers. I've heard that repetitively from bands that, the bars, especially these restaurant bars, the menu venues, they need to have better staff DNA going on and in place. Let's keep moving on here. My buddy Paul Anthony from Jersey, super cool guy, plays in a band called Big Bang Baby. Check those guys out. They are super, super badass. You can catch them in Atlantic City all the time. He was the one that was talking about proper representation, contractual agreements on every venue. A lot of bands don't do contracts. A lot of nightclubs don't do contracts with, bands that they're paying less than $1,200 or $1,500 to. It's kind of a word of mouth, buddy thing, handshake, that sort of thing. Paul was saying, should probably have some contracts in place. That's where working with an agent is really beneficial, because many times if you're coming in under an agent already has a contract with that venue that covers all their bands. So in that case, you don't even have to have a contract, because that's what you're paying the agent for. Super, super cool stuff. There's more comments about bad weather and having correct staging set up. Melissa Quinn Fox is thanking the venue for having live music and for the opportunity to play there. I think that's super, super cool. We need to be appreciative of that. Make sure you check Melissa out, because she's a badass too. Super cool, country singer from Pittsburgh. Go Steelers. Yeah, so we got another one that way that is talking about, thanks for supporting the music and arts. It's nice to have a place to go to dance, drink, spend time with family and friends. That's super cool. Rob Berkman's treat guests better. We were just talking about that. We have another comment here who is saying, don't expect the band to save your club. And I'm just quoting here, so don't get mad at me for this. Don't expect the band to save your club. Whatever it is that you need to do to build a solid reputation as a club or restaurant or whatever, do it. Don't expect my band to bring busloads of fans to your crappy little downtown bar, because you know what? I know a lot of bands who will play one venue once and see that kind of bad service going on and never come back because they know that their fan base is never going to go there. The place has a bad reputation. The DNA of the place is not good. And there's no sense. They see no benefit in playing there. Like, what does it benefit me to bring my fan base there? Because you're just going to treat them like trash. I don't want to put my fan base through that, and we don't need your club that bad on our schedule. So that there's some politics there. There's some politics there. There really is. But I understand what the brother's saying here. I really do. I get it. It comes back to what I was saying earlier. If, having a bad night or having to invest in a band for 6 months or a year to give them an opportunity to build in your venue is going to, break you and be a financial burden on you, you should really scale down your live music, approach to maybe acoustic acts that are, a third of the price, or not do music at all. Hire a DJ. Hire a DJ for $150 a night and just make the best of it. See, one thing that would be a plus is starting entertainment earlier rather than later. This guy is saying like 4 to 9 or 6 to 10, and I'm hearing what you're saying, brother. And one of the most beautiful things about COVID is COVID pushed back a lot of those performance times, and that's really been nice. Look, I'm 50 years old. I like getting home at midnight or 1 instead of 4 or 5 a.m. I get it. Trust me, guys. But here's the reality of that. You can't have a 4 to 9 gig on a Friday afternoon and think that people are going to show up, because people don't get off work till 4 or 5 o'clock. Most people statistically are working at least 45 to 55 minutes away from home. So if they get off at 5 o'clock, they don't get home till 6, maybe 6:15 if traffic's horrible, which we all know how DC and Baltimore traffic is. So, he's going to want to, shower, change, plan dinner. Maybe the wife doesn't want to go eat bar food. She wants to go to a real restaurant, so there's going to be that. So now they're not actually going to get in bar mode, or they're going to go see a live band till maybe 7, 8 o'clock. I think 7 is the earliest you could do on a Friday safely. And I think 6 is the earliest you can do on a Saturday safely. But all this really is hinging on your demographic. Because if your demographic is 35 to 55-year-olds, yeah, these earlier times is probably a good idea. Because your people aren't going to stay after midnight anyways. Those people they just don't. In the business, we call it the 12 o'clock rush. Because at 12 o'clock, everybody rushes to leave the club because they're tired and want to go home. But if your demographic is 21 to 35, them cats don't even come out till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So you need to stay open until 1:30 to accommodate that crowd, and that's where you make all your money at, And honestly, if you talk to bar owners, they'll tell you they make the most money off of food and beverage, specifically beverage, after 10 o'clock at night. Because once people get a couple drinks in them and get loosened up a little bit, they tend to drink a little bit more, or order a late night appetizer or something to get something in their stomach before they have to go out and drive home, or that sort of thing. So there's two sides to that argument, The other thing is I have heard bar owners say, okay, so your band's going to play till 10 or 11 o'clock. I'm open till 1:30. So what am I supposed to do between 10 o'clock and 1:30? You can't build a late crowd if you're not open late, Now, if you don't care about that and you're all about happy hour and then just evening and you close down, 30 minutes after the band quits, okay, well then you're fine. But if you're a big city club in DC and Baltimore or the metropolitan area, you want to stay open till 1:30, 2 o'clock, like the law allows you, so you can make the maximum amount of, profit. So then that means they got to hire a DJ to DJ for the rest of the night. Now there's an added cost. Now what they just had to pay the DJ is probably going to come out of their entertainment budget for the evening. So guess what? Now the band's not making as much money. So be careful what you wish for there. That can be a two-edged sword. I know clubs that are happy hour clubs that are closed at 11 o'clock at night. I got no problem with that, man. You do you, boo. I'm okay with it. I know other clubs who don't even get going and no one's even in the place until 10 or 11 o'clock. So they have to stay open as long as the law will allow them just to survive. Because listen, guys, we can sit here and bellyache and complain and everything else about what we want venues to do to cater to us. Because let's just be honest, some of this stuff has got a little bit of ego involved in it. I won't even read you some of the comments that are ego driven because I just don't even think they're worth the time to talk about. But, check your ego at the door. Most of you guys got day jobs and you're just weekend warriors anyways. So come on, man, keep it real. Your waitress is trying to, make a living. The guy running the bar is trying to make a living for him and his family. Be respectful of that. Understand that they're not going to roll out red carpets and give you 2 pounds of green M&Ms. Okay, you're not Van Halen. You're a local regional cover band. Okay, let's just put it in perspective. There's no shame in that, and you may be the best regional cover band in the area. Mad respect. I'm not talking smack about anybody, but let's make sure we keep things in check. Moving right along, another comment about venues need to promote better. Promoters with email addresses need to respond better. This was a big one that I got in a couple different comments here, how they send posters to the club and the club don't even put the posters up. They send emails to the person that books the club, never get any responses. And I've heard this same conversation with agents too, where agents don't respond to emails and agents don't respond to the band. Now, I know sometimes the band can drive the agent nuts with a million questions that they could probably figure out if they just, stopped for a second and thought for, 10 minutes and thought the situation out. But at the same time, if you have direct communication with the event promoter or the bar owner, them people need to have open communication. And there were several comments in here talking about that and speaking to that. Clean power again. Bottled water, no cups. Don't give your band tap water, okay? A case of bottled water costs $6 at Costco. Maybe not even $6, depending on where you live. A 5-piece band's probably not going to drink more than 24 bottles of water in one night. Come on, man. Throw the bottles in a bucket with some ice and throw them up on each side of the stage and keep these guys hydrated. Especially if you're a dock bar and they're outside, and they're in the sweltering heat, for 4 hours trying to entertain your guests and keep them there and keep them drinking. Make sure you're hydrating those guys. Make sure you're thinking about the guys that are working for you on stage, not just the people who are serving your customers, because they're important too. Bottled water, not tap water. Owners make a special drink for each event that the band can push from the stage, or a side dish, or at least communicate with the band when you advance the show, of what your specials are, what's going on in the kitchen, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. We talked a little bit about that last week. One guy on here is complaining about drum risers. I am a proponent for drum risers. I want drum risers whenever I can because it gets the cymbals up a little higher and it helps with a little bit of microphone bleed in the vocal mics. Plus, it really just makes the band look 1,000% better. But what this guy is saying is, drum risers in small venues. If you have a small venue and a small stage, don't put a drum riser in because it just eats up too much of the stage. It just does. Be smart. If you're a big venue with a big stage, hey, no problem. One more thing that comes to mind is to tag social media pages of the acts performing in your posts and videos. We talked about how the band needs to, or the club needs to connect with the band on social media. And this is another guy complaining about not responding to emails. Extremely unprofessional to not supply. Chris Richard from, the Juggernaut rock band, Doc Martin and the Flannels out of Baltimore. If you guys have never seen them, boy, you really need to check that out. He said, if you want to play outside, why not then go ahead and cover the area so that you don't die. I think he's talking about, some rain protection, and he's talking about, shade. All this digital equipment, bar owners, if you're listening, all this digital equipment that these guys are using, my digital equipment as well, does not like direct sunlight. Direct sunlight is the absolute enemy of that stuff. And the stuff will overheat and just shut down. And then it's show over. Show is over. Until you can get the unit in the shade, or you can get it covered up, or you can get it to come back on, and then it wants to be, temperamental the rest of the day because it's still hot. So again, be intelligent about how you do your stage to try to create enough stage or create enough shade, to be able to, help the bands keep their equipment running correctly. He's talking about power. We've already talked about that. He's talking about the rain thing as well. Marty Obramo wants free beer. Okay, Marty. Okay, then I want to read you this. This is from Jay Sloanacre. Jay Sloanacre is my marketing guy, and he's a musician, and he's been around music his whole life. That's why I hired him to work for me, because he understands the business. If you're looking for someone that can really market and take your band to the next level and have your band name popping up in search engines and getting things correct with your videos and stuff like that, Jay is your guy. And Jay listed 10 things here that I think every band should be communicating with the venue about. Number one, how many people typically attend? So you're asking the bar, we talked about that earlier, you're asking the bar what kind of numbers they bring to the table. What are your typical demographics of attendees? That's a valid question to ask a venue. What's the age group of your audience typically? So you can adjust your set list accordingly. You don't want to be playing Sweet Home Alabama to a bunch of 21-year-olds. You probably want to be playing Justin Bieber, some kind of pop thing. Number three, what would you like to see to be considered a successful event? We touched on that a little bit earlier. Number four, what is their marketing plan and how can we cross promote? We've talked about that. What is a stretch goal target we want to shoot for that will generate a bonus or higher pay or a regular calendar slot? Now, this is a great question because I have worked in clubs where you made a flat rate, and then over a certain amount of people through the door, you could get a bonus of $200 or $400. That's not a bad formula for clubs, because it gives the band some incentive to really want to get people there so they can get that bonus, and then the club benefits from that. So that would be a really valid question to ask the venue is, hey man, what is your goal and target to be able to build some kind of bonus and incentive plan in place, and to just be a regular band on your schedule. Number six, what was something another act or event did or happened that you hope never happens again, and also an experience you loved and hope can make happen again? So I think that's great. I think that's great to ask the ask the club or the event promoter, was there some kind of deal-breaking, catastrophic thing that has happened in the past, so we can kind of, keep an eye out for that. There's been situations where I have asked security those questions. Like, is there anything we need to keep our eyes open for while we're here? Do you have a late night crowd that is, violent when they get drunk? You get that in biker bars sometimes. Do we need to be aware of that so we can steer clear of that? And, if things start getting edgy on the dance floor, you guys got to do your job, to get people out the door and to diffuse situations. Is that something that typically happens at your club? So that's a valid point. And then, what good thing? What good thing happened that, we can maybe help, happen again? In my mind, it seems like that's pretty obvious, like, just selling the place out. Everybody wants to make money. It's always going to come back to money. Number 9, we know a lot of people and have a lot of resources. What's an obstacle you're facing? I may know a solution. 2 minds are always better than 1, Sometimes you're going to have a hard time getting a bar owner or somebody to settle down long enough to even have an intelligent conversation with. Like I said last week, you may only get 30 seconds with the guy, but if you can get somebody who will actually sit down and have this kind of conversation with you, by all means, man, let's put our best foot forward. And then number 10, if I can make some suggestions that can make this event more successful, is there room for changes to how things are being done? Can I suggest another expert, artist, marketing, or process? I think that's I think that's valid. You may bump into some control freak, egomaniac, businessmen, because most businessmen are like that. That's why they're high achieving and make a lot of money, is because they're control freaks and they're people who know how to take the bull by the horns and make things happen. So you may have a problem getting them to let go of that kind of control, but at the same time, again, if you can get someone to listen to you and say, hey, look, this is something we do in the club, across town, and it works really well. I've been in situations where the club had all the waitresses dress up as a theme for the band. Like, say you book an 80s band and everybody dresses up like 80s, or a 70s disco band. Everybody dresses up like 70s. Or I used to mix a band called Drunk Naked Pirates, and we had the club I was working at the time, everybody dressed up like pirates, all the staff. And that made the band feel like $1 million. It really did, That's something to think about, guys. It really is. There's always room for improvement. So Paul McGill is a good buddy of mine down in Westminster, DJ Gadget. Do your share of advertising. We've talked about that. And supporting live music that you host. Many bands create Facebook events, blah, blah, blah. We talked about all that. Also see venues with a marquee. We talked about the marquee thing. It's a two-way street with getting bodies in the door, and it really is. It really is a two-way street. And then I'm going to talk about 2 more comments, and we're going to end the video. I don't want to go crazy long. I've already went longer than I should have. I got one comment here that says, our worth. Our price, club owners, venues, and promoters don't determine what we are worth and our price. Our worth is based on our talent and fan base and our show. I agree with that to a certain point, but from a bar owner's perspective, it's really going to just be about your fan base. It's really going to be about, because I know bars that book horrible bands that are musically torture to listen to, but they sell out every time they book because of whatever reason. Spin the wheel. So you can be a horrible band and a venue will still book you every 6 weeks because they know that they're going to make money off of you if you're selling the place out. So that really is what dictates the price. That really is what dictates your worth. And if you have a consistent track record of that, you'll have no problem getting the money you're looking for, and you won't have to argue with venue owners all the time about trying to getting paid what you think you're worth. I know a whole lot of bands that think they're worth a lot more than what they are. Don't get mad at me. It's a fact. Ask any agent and they'll tell you that they have bands that they work with regularly who think because they've been together for 10 years, they should be making $3,000 a night, and they're still drawing the same 75, 80, 100 people they were drawing 10 years ago. They haven't grown. They haven't gotten to the next level. They're still a high B band, maybe at best a low A band or something like that. And some of them bands are really good musically, but they're not worth more than what their draw is. So that is what that is. And I talked a lot about that in the last 2 videos. If you haven't seen those videos, make sure you go back there and you check that out. So I got one more. Let me find it here. Yeah. So this is from Greg Picard, who is a bass player for Shake the Room. Those are my boys. I mix those guys regularly. Badass cover band from Baltimore. Please check them out. Please go support those guys because they support me and they help, feed me by sending me work. I do a lot of work with those guys, and they're a great band, and they're great guys to work with, super great guys to work with. And Greg is basically saying, make the venue band friendly. He mentions, power, because everybody that commented pretty much mentioned power and, cross-marketing stuff. But he also goes with, adequate band parking and being a load-in friendly venue. I can tell you right now, from a production company standpoint, I have a short list of blackball venues that I will not work at no matter who calls me. Even when Shake the Room calls me, they're one of my favorite bands to work with. It's just, if the load in is horrible, if the venue's on the second floor and I got to carry a bunch of gear up steps, you're never going to see me again. You may get me once, but you're not going to get me a second time. Now I know second floor venues that have house sound and all you have to do is carry in stage gear. Depending on the age of the band, that may or may not be a blacklist kind of thing either. I just talked to a band the other day that played a second floor venue that had house sound who said they'd never go back. And those guys are in their late 40s and early 50s, and they don't want to carry a full drum set and guitar amps and all that kind of stuff upstairs. I get it. If you want to have live music, make your venue band friendly. The problem I run into as a production company pulling a 16-foot enclosed trailer to these club gigs, specifically in the city, the venue has made no provisions for where I'm supposed to park. Just like 2 days ago, I turned down a corporate event at a ballroom in downtown DC because I'm familiar with the hotel and there's no parking. There's nowhere to park. Like, you can park 4 miles away and take a taxi cab back and hope that someone doesn't steal your truck and trailer where you parked at, but make the venue band friendly, man. Set aside places for the band to park and to be able to load in. Put your stage in a place in your venue where it's easy access. The best scenario is always we open a gate and there's the stage. Or we open a door and there's the stage. And you can drop the gear, drop the ramp of the trailer, 15 feet from the door. And you just roll right in. All my stuff's on wheels. So all I gotta do is just roll it in. Stairs is never cool. There's a dock bar I'm thinking of right now, won't mention their name, who has about 8 or 10 steps you have to go up in order to get onto the deck to be able to play the venue. There's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't have a ramp right next to where the stairs are. They have plenty of room there in the parking lot. The way the venue's laid out, there's plenty of room to be able to do that. And then the band could drop their gear right at the bottom of the ramp. And plus it makes the venue way more handicap accessible. And they can roll stuff right up onto that deck and right where they need to go. But instead, it's a complete pain in the rear end. And at 50 years old, like I said, I blackball that stuff. I did a venue one time on the second floor, swore they had an elevator, and we got there and the elevator broke. And that's happened to me in 2 different venues, both of which are on the blacklist, and I won't go back there for any amount of money. I'm not interested in playing the venue. Now, the one venue was nice enough to send kitchen personnel out to help carry stuff up the stairs, but it was a freaking nightmare. And no one wants to play those places, man. Bands don't want to play clubs that are hard to load into. Bands don't want to play clubs that don't have, sufficient power and their gear's browning out all night. Bands don't want to, play clubs where there's nowhere to park, or they have to, most of the time bands bring extra gear in case something breaks. Well, they don't always unload all that. They leave it in their car. I have a very good friend of mine who, at that second floor venue I was just talking about, somebody broke into her car and stole her wireless mic out of her car. Right in the parking lot. 80 feet from where they were playing. That's why bands don't want to park their vehicles, in a block down the freaking street, man, because they're worried to death somebody's going to break into it and steal their stuff. I carry a ton of extra stuff because I am Mr. Redundancy. I have all kinds of redundancy protocol in my systems. So I carry a ton of extra stuff with me everywhere I go. So when I unload the trailer, I'm only unloading about half the trailer. There's still another 60 grand worth of gear sitting in the trailer. I don't want to go park that thing 6 blocks down the street in some dark freaking gravel parking lot that, any Joe Blow can come along and, cut the padlocks off of it and rob me blind. I'm not coming back to that venue. I'm just not. So I think that is super important. Okay, so that concludes my reactions to your comments. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for these comments. Thank you for sharing all this information. I think it's hugely beneficial. Next week, we're going to flip the script. I am going to personally send some emails and make some phone calls to some venue owners that I'm friends with and some agents that I'm friends with, and I'm going to ask them what comments they have about the bands they work with. So we're going to spin this thing around, and we're going to talk from the venue's perspective. I'm going to put up some posts online as well, and I have a feeling that if you guys will come back and set through another video that's too long, I'm telling you, you're going to learn some stuff about the venues you play at. I guarantee you will learn some stuff about the venues you play at, because there's another side of this conversation you don't know. As much as we can stand here and say venue owners and concert promoters have no idea how we do what we do, they can say bands and production companies don't know how to do what they do. I think it's a fair shake. So next week, we're going to dig into that. Next week, we're going to hear from the agents, and we're going to hear from the venue owners, and we're going to see what they have to say about the bands they work with. And I already got 4 or 5 things on the top of my head I know they're going to bring to the table, because I've seen it for myself. One, I'll just let one out of the back. One is, some of you guys don't freaking tip your waitresses. You know, you expect the band, or you expect the bar to give the band, you know, a bar tab, or, you know, a food tab, you know, so you can eat dinner before you go on stage. They do all that, give it to you for free, and then you can't even freaking tip the waitress. And I have seen those scenarios play out to where the bar just quits giving any comps. Like, okay, then y'all can pay for all your food. You can pay for every drink that you can get. And if you're a band that expects a club to treat you with that kind of respect, you better damn sure tip the waitress, and I mean tip her good. I'm not talking some 15, 20%, you know, bull crap. I'm talking about bless the girl, because your band table took up a table all night long. They could have had maybe 2 or 3 different parties at that table throughout your show. But you took that table, so you should always, you know, tip them double what you would normally tip, especially if it's a tab with 5, 6 people on it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be giving that waitress $50, $60. Come on, man. Between 5 and 6, that's $10 a person in the band. Okay? Come on. So we're going to dig into some more of that next week. Appreciate you guys coming. Please like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Follow, hit the notifications thing. Hit that subscription button more than anything else. It costs nothing to hit the subscription button. Please hit the subscription button and support this channel. If you enjoy this content, if you find value in this content, please hit the subscription button and support this. I'll see you guys next week. I love all you all.